Howdy. This is a reading for the upcoming lunar month that begins with the new moon in Scorpio on the 1st of November, 2024. Initially, I was going to kind of go line by line and discuss a lot of the astrological movements that are happening right now, but I'm really only going to highlight a couple of them and allow the tarot to sort of mirror and reflect the most important energies that are coming through in the stars. But yeah, so this lunar month actually corresponds with the 10th lunar month of the Chinese lunisolar calendar. And the 10th lunar month is associated with the second hexagram of the I Ching. We're going to be talking a little bit about the I Ching hexagrams that I've drawn for today's reading. You actually have one hexagram that I've got over here. We'll get into that in just a second, but it has some transforming lines that also create another hexagram that we'll read about. And as far as the I Ching reading goes, I'm using Benabel Wen's I Ching, the Oracle book. I use this book a lot, so if you haven't seen one of my videos before, this is the book that I primarily use for my I Ching readings. Anyway, so the 10th month of the Chinese lunisolar calendar is associated with the second hexagram, which is Earth over Earth. You know, it's completely all yin lines. There's no yang line in sight. It's the complete state of receptivity and stillness and sort of, I don't think consolidating is the right word, but kind of flowing and being receptive to energy coming in rather than kind of outputting energy. And it makes sense. The 10th lunar month in the Chinese calendar is actually the month that precedes the month during which the southern solstice takes place, which is, you know, the winter solstice for those of us in the northern hemisphere. But with that said, these energies transcend the seasonal variances between the two hemispheres. I think a lot of times we get a little confused associating even things like the zodiac signs with seasons, which isn't the entire truth of what they represent and the energies that they kind of convey. But yeah, so the sun at the time of the southern solstice is reaching the southernmost extreme of declination between the ecliptic plane and the equatorial plane. So it's the lowest point that the sun appears to take in our sky. And so for those of us in the north, it's the shortest day of the year. For those in the south, it's their longest day of the year. But there's still this sort of dynamic happening where the southern portion of the earth is interacting with the sun, is interacting with the solar field. Electromagnetically, and I mean, there's not a lot of discussion about this yet that I've kind of seen, but I think it's kind of an interesting rabbit hole for us to develop more study on. But during this time, the southern electromagnetic pole of the Earth is more readily interacting with the sun because it's facing towards the sun, and so this is the more receptive portion of the Earth's electromagnetic field. When there's like solar flares or, you know, even like cosmic ray interaction that takes place with the Earth's, that kind of couples or interacts with the Earth's magnetic field, it's more readily integrated into the Earth's charge through the southern pole, whereas if something is directed at the northern magnetic pole of the Earth, it's more likely to be deflected and not enter into the Earth's circuit. So, you know, this idea of this month being most associated with that receptive state, that state of total receptivity, is even is even sort of manifested in the annual position of the Earth relative to the sun at this time. And there may be some like seasonal associations with it, but I think it's something that's a little bit more global in scope and not so localized and relevant to only like a specific portion of the population. I think it's relevant to everyone. So there's more of like an influx of energy happening. It's sort of building up the Earth's charge and sort of providing an energy that's going to, manifest itself as the year progresses beyond the winter solstice, beyond the southern solstice, rather. And if you look at the hexagram associated with the 11th month, it's Earth over... I have to think in my head to remember which trigram is the two yin lines over the one yang line. I want to say it's thunder. Yeah, Earth over thunder. So it's like that first inclination of the yang energy, because the moment that the sun hits the mathematical point of the southern solstice, it begins to move northward again. It changes direction. And this is kind of also why the glyph for Cancer is the sign of like the two sort of rotating points, kind of indicating this changeover of direction, because these two solstice points are the points where the sun begins to either move from a northern movement to a southern one, or from a southern movement to a northern one. Even in the Indian calendar, the Hindu calendar, the solar year is divided into two halves, which is the upward or ascending half and the descending half of the year, and it's referencing this solar motion. Okay, but anyway, long digression aside, the new moon is on the 1st of November at about 7:47 Central Daylight Time. It's going to be taking place at 9 degrees 35 minutes of Scorpio. Not going to get into the planetary stuff happening around that time, but it moves us into the full moon on the 15th of November, which takes place at about 3:28 Central Standard Time, because remember, we're doing that stupid time changeover, fallback, whatever you want to call it. I think it's ridiculous. I hate it. It messes up everyone's sleep schedule and gets us all confused for quite a while until we kind of get back into the natural rhythms of things. But that full moon on the 15th is going to be taking place at 24 degrees 0 minutes of Taurus. It's also the day that Saturn stations direct in Pisces at about 12 degrees 41 minutes. And then we move into the new lunar month of the 11th month, which is the month during which the southern solstice takes place. And that occurs with the new moon on the 1st of December, just after midnight, about 12:21 a.m. Central Standard Time, at 9 degrees 33 minutes of Sagittarius. Between the full moon and that next new moon, we have, Mercury stationing retrograde on the 25th. We have... the outer planets are going to be stationing direct a little bit later, like in February, January, later in December. We have Neptune stationing direct on the 7th of December. Anyway, all that stuff aside, this is kind of a big month. There's a lot of harsh, or rather, let's say, well-defined aspects between the planets during this month, and there's also a lot of worldly happenings kind of happening around this kind of manifesting itself within this energy that's, expressed in the stars and everything. But yeah, so we're going to read from the I Ching. I'm going to read about these two hexagrams that we got. So we start off with hexagram 47, and it actually transforms into hexagram 4, I believe. Yeah, so... We'll read about these two hexagrams, and we're also going to be pulling some cards from the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck, and I like that Strength or Lust is the card that came through for that. That's Leo's card, but we'll get into that later. So I'm going to set my notebook aside just so it's out of my way, and we are going to read about hexagram number 47, which is Kun, or blockade. And this is composed of the trigrams. Upper trigram is lake, and the lower trigram is water. So lake over water. Lake is associated with the Chinese element of metal, and water is with water. So let's see. Hexagram 47, the oracle says, ambitions hit a wall, feeling exhausted and worn down. You are overwhelmed, unable to cope with your feelings of entanglement. Barriers of entry to the next level of advancement. Forces cause you to become isolated, closed off, and surrounded. Obstruction of passage and progress. A state of inner oppression. In the darkness, you do not yet see how the restraining bonds can be broken. First, do not let external forces restrain you. Restrain yourself. Control what you can control. Cultivate an inner strength that becomes an outer strength, and you can shatter the iron hand that is otherwise holding you back. I want to take a moment to pause at that line where it says a state of inner oppression. With a lot of the personal readings that I've been doing lately for myself, the Ten of Wands has been coming up a lot, and that's the last decan of Sagittarius, kind of guiding us into the southern solstice point at 0 degrees of Capricorn. I'm kind of curious to see, I just want to mention it now, and I'm curious to see if it comes out again in the reading today, because it seems like it's been showing its face to me every single time I do a reading the last couple of days, so something about that maybe seems relevant to the larger story. Maybe it's going to be an important 10-ish day period of time as the sun traverses through that decan, leading us into the southern solstice this year. So maybe something to kind of bookmark and keep in mind. But anyway, let's see. Exhausted and entangled, feelings of hardship bring on a depression. The sage subscribes to the conviction that destiny is leavened by free will and determination. Yet the sage also knows that destiny is written into the annals, and to know destiny so that one might navigate it is to consult the annals. Forecast of triumph over hardship, auspicious for the eminent one. Truth presents itself, but there is no truth. Trust presents itself, but there is no trust. There is a message, but it is not a message. Words spoken, but there is no meaning. Sign of the sacrifice. Losses sustained for a greater good or greater subsequent success. Hexagram 47 describes one with great ambitions, but with that comes great demands. Pursuit of big rewards comes with big risks. At this particular point in time, challenges and barriers hold you back from movement forward. Perseverance will bring you good fortune. That is also kind of a message that's been coming through a lot lately. This idea of enduring or persevering in the spite of hardship and kind of working past obstacles, which is very much what this hexagram is conveying, is this need to kind of grow beyond the limitations or the bounds, the restrictions, to break through and overcome the obstacle, which she gets into right here. The etymology of the ideogram for Kun, hexagram 47, is wood, mu, I think, and the ideogram for wood, mu, it's like a cross with these two diagonal lines radiating from the intersecting point. The ideogram for Kun, which is this hexagram here, is this character with a box around it. So wood, symbolic of growth and prosperity, boxed in and surrounded by this, this square. This is the chi force that besieges with difficulties, because, you can kind of see in the imagery of that, you have this wood growth, plant-like, tree-like element that wants to spread and branch out, and it's being restricted and put into this little box. So it says, when hexagram 47 comes up, increase wood chi in your surroundings. And that could be with surrounding yourself with plants. I know there's a feng shui practice of hanging up wooden flutes, or using wooden furniture or wooden statues to kind of increase the wood chi in an environment, but plants are an excellent way to do that. Maybe going and spending a lot more time out in nature and trying to kind of interface with the energy that's inherent in the natural spaces where there's not a lot of concrete, there's not a lot of buildings, there's not noise. Take your headphones out and put your phone away for a little bit and just listen to the sound of the wind and the leaves, and connect with what it means to be in a state of growth, in a state of being nourished and utilizing the earth's natural energy to kind of direct and branch out. Hopefully that makes sense. But maybe this will be a way to help your mind reach a state of equilibrium or stillness and clarity, through which you're able to process through the obstacle that's being represented by this hexagram, however it's sort of manifesting for you in your particular situation. The trigram thunder is also utilized in metaphysical measures to counteract the blockade. One, because of its notion as power, like directed power, even in terms of like witchcraft or ritual to kind of break through any sort of blockade of energy. But it's also associated with the Chinese element of wood as well. So it's kind of like a nice little two bird, one stone sort of thing. When the fifth line of hexagram 47 is changed from yang to yin, the hexagram becomes 40, ji, meaning to release the tension and untie the knots. That upper trigram transformation is from lake to thunder. Okay, no. I was like, you do have a transformed trigram. Like all three of these lines are transformed. And for a second, I was like, it does transform into thunder. And I'm like, no, it's the opposite. It transforms into mountain. But we'll get into that. Likewise, hexagram 47 was traditionally used in baneful magic to blockade someone and prevent that person from achieving prosperity or advancement. So I almost wonder if this month is sort of conveying, or this hexagram for this month is conveying this idea of maybe somebody achieving victory in some capacity, somebody reaching a state of fulfillment, and then outside influences, outside perspectives and opinions sort of imposing these restrictions on this person and saying, no, you actually can't do this because X, Y, and Z. Like this notion of like some form of outside influence weighing in on your attempts to grow and your attempts to succeed and excel at something. And so the overall message here is to absolutely like continue persevering in spite of that. Like there may be an element of like truth on your side, or an element of you're in the right to some degree to continue to push past the restricting, limiting force, whatever it is. And also I kind of feel like intuitively as I'm connecting with it, it's like this idea that whatever it is outwardly that appears to be restricted, or it seems like there are obstacles put in place, and I notice I say put in place and not like they just exist of their own accord. It's like there's definite intention behind these blockades being kind of built up around this tree that's trying to grow and flourish in its own way. It's like I feel it's going against the natural order of things, because it's giving me the image of this tree having these like police, like freeway wooden blockades put around it in order to like restrict people from going up and like touching the tree for blessings, or like even offering blessings to this tree. It's like a sacred tree for some reason that I'm seeing. Like it stands for truth in some way, or it stands for a certain purity or a return to a simpler spirit, maybe. And it's like I'm seeing some people like sort of gathered around this blockade, and instead of like acknowledging that this blockade is kind of unnecessarily put in place in front of this really sacred and beautiful object, this tree, they're kind of sitting and like staring at the blockade, like getting really distracted by the grains in the wood, or like the color of the tape, or like, because I'm seeing like a wooden blockade. I'm not seeing like a necessarily like the caution tape that police typically put up. But it's like they're just like focusing on the blockade rather than like stepping back and being like, why is this even here in the first place? You know, this clearly is not something that we need to be held back away from, because I feel like the blockades aren't put in place in order to protect the tree. It's more to restrict the ability of people to approach it and to find meaning in it, because the meaning is dangerous for some reason. like it provides too much empowerment of the individual, too much nourishment to the individual, too much opportunity for stillness and quiet and clarity. And I feel like in order for these blockades to be successful, there's like an imposition that needs to take place, like a sort of covering over of this quiet, natural state of being. I'm not sure what that's about, but take that as you will. I'm going to go through and just read the 3 changing lines that we have for this hexagram today, and then we're going to read from hexagram 4, which is what it transforms into. But we're still on this guy, 47. So we have changing line 4, 5, and 6. So we'll start with the 4th line. We have slow passage homeward, trapped in a golden carriage. Adversity, yet there will be an ending to that adversity. Difficulties with understanding who you really are. In a way, this is a questioning of personal identity or challenges with the who am I philosophical inquiry. Journeying forward will be difficult, and while it may feel like there is no end in sight to the adversity experienced, it will come to its cessation. A good outcome prognosticated, not so much in the sense of good fortune, but more in the sense that you will be able to overcome the adversity and return to neutral. I almost said return to natural. Like kind of what I was saying of like going out into these natural spaces or surrounding yourselves with plants or trees and trying to kind of harmonize again with that state of homeostasis of like natural balance and order and stillness. In a lighter, mundane reading of being trapped in a golden carriage, it can indicate obstacles encountered when traveling, such as flight delays, traffic jams, getting stranded somewhere, and so on. Literal obstacles to progress, to movement. Okay, so 5th line, cutting off the nose, cutting off the feet, bound by the vermilion sash. Pardon the sound of the plane taking off. Speak with poise, or poise, calm and steady, a quiet tone, and thus shall there be progress. Favors granted after the ceremonial offering. You have been wronged and you feel alone. No one will hear your appeal. A divine intervention is needed. The 5 punishments of imperial China were tattooing the face, cutting off the nose, cutting off the feet, castration, and execution. 2 of the 5, cutting off the nose and cutting off the feet, are stated here, the 5th line. Cutting off the nose was symbolic of loss in social status and condemning one to lifelong bad fortune. The nose represented one's luck. Cutting off the feet was punishment for stealing, trespassing, treason, or sedition. The vermilion sash was worn by officials of the king or government, upon which they'd hang their seals. We got another plane going by, so bear with me. Okay. To be bound by the vermilion sash could mean feeling the restrictive consequences of law and policy, institutional or systemic influences. Or it could mean you are the one who is carrying such a seal, and now you are feeling bound by your status and position. Recall the foreshadowing in the 2nd line, where the vermilion sash reference first appeared. There it was suggested that punishment might be imminent. The narrative progresses to this point of the 5th line, the climax, where indeed there has been a sentencing, 2 of the 5 punishments, no less. Guilty or innocent, justified or unjustified, you've been punished, or you feel like you're being punished. You're feeling condemned by the situation at hand. There's something I want to say about that, but we'll see. We'll keep going. Appeal your case and save yourself through discussion, negotiation, and keeping your tone quiet and calm. Stay composed and have poise. Additionally, Ji means to go before the altar with offerings and a ceremony to petition the spirits for help. Your petition will be answered. Divine intervention may be the only way out of the situation. Ji is the image of an altar and a hand with a piece of meat as an offering coming before the altar or in ceremony. Si means both to sacrifice and to venerate. Before we go further, I did forget to mention when I was talking about the lunar month 10, trigram number 2, hexagram number 2 rather, composed of both trigrams being earth, completely yin lines. is also the hexagram that's associated with like ancestral spirit communication, like ghostly communication, like communicating with spirits that have returned to the earth, so to speak. And it's kind of funny that this lunar month also corresponds with the period of time when Halloween takes place, or All Hallows Eve, Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. It's very interesting that we have these traditions in place that honor this sort of I don't want to say seasonal, this period in time, this little moment in the year's journey, I guess. So kind of how this line was talking about, like going before the altar with offerings and ceremony to petition the spirits for help. This is an excellent time to be doing so anyway, this lunar month. Like I'm building up an ofrenda for family members of my own and for a friend of mine. We're going to have like their pictures up and, have like offerings of flowers and incense and, offer prayers, light candles, maybe even offer like sweet treats, like candies and food and whatnot. Just as a way to sort of appease their spirits and retain direct communion with them and sort of petition them for blessings and for assistance with navigating the muck and the mire of being an embodied person, because they have a kind of an advantage being disembodied, where they're able to see things more clearly and more wholly, as opposed to us being very tunnel visioned and our bodies kind of being overruled by our emotional biases and our inner filters through which we sort of perceive the world around us. They have that kind of stripped away for the most part. So it is helpful to approach them when you're running into difficulties or issues. And I think it's a practice that should be more prevalent in our society, because I think it would not only would it potentially help us with navigating our own problems, but I think it would help us to develop more of a relationship with life as a sacred thing rather than as this mechanical postmodern world view that we have right now. And I feel like it's sort of happening. I feel like a lot of us are returning to a state of acknowledging life as a whole as being something sacred and beautiful and spiritual, divine even. But it's a process, and there's a lot of room for growth. You just got to break out of that box, kind of like that tree, Okay, so last line of this hexagram, we have the 6th line. Entangled by creeping vines, feeling trapped among the wild grass, moving with uncertainty, voicing regrets, showing remorse. Gains from undertaking the expedition. The expedition includes implications of an attack or strike with the objective to conquer. Thus, it is symbolic of an ambitious undertaking. An auspicious outcome is prognosticated. And I wonder if the outcome is what's going to be communicated by this next hexagram. Because like I was saying, we have these 3 transforming lines. So these 2 yang lines would turn into yin lines, and this yin line at the top would turn into a yang line, making this mountain over water. Hexagram number 4. Let's see. Where are we? Hexagram number 4. A little further. Right here. Oh. Hexagram 4. Meng, naivete, which mountain over water. We have the earth element with the mountain and the water element. The oracle says, "You are focused on the wrong inquiry. The oracle shall give no further insight unless the inexperienced fool can return with proper sincerity. Seek out better teachings to learn better ways. Be aware of your inexperience. Acknowledge it. Your modesty will advance you much further than the fool feigning to be the master. This is the folly of inexperience. The solution is simple: greater nourishment and nurture." That said, clearly with my reading out of this book, I am no master of the I Ching. I have, very limited experience. I've only kind of really started dabbling with it recently in the last few months. So there's a lot that I don't know about it, but I'm trying to sort of bridge what I do know, or the associations that I've kind of been gathering as I'm going through this process of learning, in order to provide insight, and also just kind of reconnecting with my intuitive tendencies anyway. And this kind of gives it more form. So I don't know, maybe by me acknowledging this in this reading, it kind of provides something for you. Like maybe there's I kind of see outwardly, politically now, that there's a lot of people who claim to know what the truth is and what the right decision is, and that kind of saying that if you do this, then you're this person, or if you believe this, then you belong with these particular people. And it's like, I feel like this hexagram is also kind of conveying this need to be careful with doing that, being less inclined to try to box someone in, or to say that you understand the truth of a situation when you really don't. You're really only gleaning from maybe one particular pool of sources, rather than like trying to be objective and taking in many different perspectives and viewpoints, and really trying to find the overlaps in order to find the thread of truth running beneath the surface kind of turmoil, the surface waves that are kind of crashing every which direction. Because I feel like right now the energy feels very extreme. There's a lot of polarity. There's a lot of dissent and opposition, conflict. I don't think, especially in the United States, I know a lot of us are seeing our own culture kind of collapsing in on itself, because everybody's pointing fingers at the other person, saying that they're the worst person to ever exist. It's like both, or every side rather, is saying this, and it's like very few of us are like sitting back and saying, hey, this whole like finger pointing thing, like where are we going to end up if we keep doing this? It's not productive. It's not conducive to the sustenance or the maintenance or the even expansion and proliferation of a society that's more supportive for positive cultural values, art, and creativity, and even like the notions of individual liberty and things like that. Like all of this is kind of being thrust into the spotlight, and being framed in different ways by different people. And I feel like the tendency is to get caught up in accepting one person's or one group's interpretation of what's going on. And these interpretations kind of serve maybe vested interests and other things, or like selfish aims on part of like one or several people. So it's like, be very careful before you identify with an ideology, or before you say one thing before you ascribe a truth to something without fully understanding what is actually going on. Because I guarantee that most of us don't actually know what's going on. We're just kind of spewing or repeating out talking points that we're seeing on the internet, or that we've read in books, and we're not really coming to a genuine understanding of what's actually happening. So that's kind of what I'm gleaning from this hexagram thus far. But let's keep reading. A favorable outcome for the naive but innocent. I do not seek out the child. The child will seek me out. The child in the oracle's statement is symbolic of one who is naive, one who is still learning and in the developmental stage. When you encounter uncertainty, come to me. The first divination is the answer. Repeated questioning shows contempt. I do not answer after the third. Self-correct, readjust your perspective, and you may perform a divination for the same question again. Reflect on the divination method and the state of your heart-mind before you begin. Proceed with sincerity and diligence. And this also still kind of goes along the same vein of like being very quick to identify with what somebody is saying, or with their own view or perspective on things. And this even includes me. It includes you kind of approaching other readers or astrologers on the internet, and like kind of taking their words or their perspectives as the ultimate answer without really taking the time to digest yourself, to digest the concepts or digest the energies or digest the happenings in your own way and coming to an understanding on your own terms. These are obviously like tools for kind of coming to a different interpretation of what's going on, a different perspective of what's going on, but ultimately you're just looking in the mirror. And I don't know about you guys, but when I do personal readings for myself, sometimes if I'm not satisfied with the answer that I get, even though it, reads me for the filth, so to speak, I'll sometimes do another reading and I'll, try to come up with a different answer, but it's usually the same answer that comes up, even if it's, phrased in a slightly different way. And if we're not listening or paying attention, it's just sort of like, what's the point of the universe even interfacing with you if you're not going to heed the message that's coming through? Like if you're struggling with uncertainty, or you're struggling with trying to make sense of a situation, and you're trying to approach the oracle, divination, tarot readers, astrologers in a way that provides you with the answer, I feel like you already have access to what the answer is. You already have access to the information and the message that is relevant to you. It's just a matter of you sitting, being still, maybe going out into those natural spaces, quieting your mind, and feeling the truth of it for yourself, rather than trying to, pick out bits and pieces and trying to change the message to suit your own understanding of things. And here comes another plane. So just be careful with that, I think, is kind of what's being conveyed here. Let's see. I will answer the second divination, like the second attempt to acquire a message from the divine, from the oracle. If you are not sincere with me and you proceed with a third divination, then I will not be sincere with you. In short, the oracle is saying, I will only help the self-seeker, somebody who is willing to put in the work to understand, to truly understand, and to, even shape and change their life as necessary in order to incorporate and integrate the truth that's been acquired, or the understanding, the growth that's been developed as a result. Yet the outcome prognosticated by hexagram 4 is favorable. The philosophy of the book is one of optimism. The oracle operates on the faith that it is human nature to seek transcendence from our ignorance and naivete. It is in our nature to want to grow. Ignorance is pervasive, yet to err is not evil. It is naivete and a result of inexperience. Hexagram 4 comes up when one is indecisive, changing direction too often, initiating more undertakings than they can finish, and the oracle is trying to tell you, stop, settle down, take a breath, focus. Now try again. Let's see. Okay. So because the top trigram was all the changing lines in the last hexagram, I'm just going to read those 3 lines, and then we'll get into the tarot portion of this reading today. So we start with the 4th line. The inexperienced fool is mired in confusion, facing obstacles. Endeavor for corrective measures before proceeding. You are not being receptive to wisdom and knowledge at this time. An adjustment of your mindset is needed. The counsel here is to fall back. Do not proceed. You are not ready to advance yet. 5th line. Childlike naivete is innocence. It is auspicious for the innocent to proceed. A distinction needs to be made between inexperienced foolishness and childlike naivete. While the former will bring you failure, the latter will bring you success. Be humble, be open, and be receptive. Be a child, innocent and ready to receive proper instruction. Subordinate yourself to the teachings of those wiser and more experienced. 6th line. No gains yielded from expelling the foe. No gains yielded from becoming a foe. Gains come from resisting the attack. Resolve darkness by shining the light in defense of your position. Do not try to resolve darkness by becoming the darkness. Defending yourself does not mean having to offend others. Prevent robbers from robbing, but do not become a robber yourself. Stand your ground against adversaries, but do not become adversarial. I like that line a lot. Go back and listen to that again. Okay, we're going to move on to the tarot portion of this reading before we end up being here until next month. So I'll set this over here so it's kind of in the background. You can kind of see it. This is our changed hexagram. But let's see what the tarot has to say today, and maybe it'll convey some of the more important astrological movements, astrological movements relevant to this particular lunar month, which I don't know if I mentioned is associated with the Chinese zodiac of the boar or pig. It's the 12th earthly branch. I'm seeing a cave as I'm shuffling. But it's like a cave and it's lit by a torch, and I can't see who's carrying the torch. But the torch is casting shadows, and I'm seeing like the jagged shadows of the stalagmites and the stalactites. And there's like a pool of water. And like at the bottom of the pool of water is like these shimmering rocks. They're like shining and glistening different colors. So it's like, I don't know if this is representing like some sort of self-inquiry, some sort of investigation that's taking place, whether on the level of the individual or on the level of like actual information about a circumstance or situation. But it's yielding truths. I feel like the glistening rocks are representing the principle of beauty, the principle of truth, clarity, clear perception, because it reflects the light back. And what is the light? Light is truth. Light is the self. Seeing somebody like walking into this pond or this lake, and I'm like hearing the water rippling out from their legs as they're taking steps and going deeper into this body of water. And it's like this is necessary for the investigation that's taking place, whatever it is. Like this need to kind of invest yourself emotionally and to explore the emotional depths, to explore uncomfortable spaces even that sort of challenge your perceptions, maybe your paradigm, in order to come to these new understandings about what's actually going on. But it's like it's a hostile environment, so you have to be careful, because I feel like the stalagmites and the stalactites and the jagged shadows are like representing the creeps and the crawlies and the enemies that are kind of lurking around the corner, watching and waiting for you to make a mistake. Okay. I think that's it. So let's go ahead and pull some cards. First card, we have the Princess of Discs. This is Earth, so this could be Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn. Princess kind of has like more of a kind of like airy, mercurial energy to me. I'm trying to remember when I wrote it down, when Mercury moves into Mercury won't be moving into Capricorn for a while, not this month, and I don't think next month either, because it'll be retrograde. But Knight of Wands next. So fire, we have Aries, Leo, Sagittarius kind of showing up. Queen of Cups, a lot of court cards, my goodness. Water, so Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces. Six of Discs, which is the middle decan of Taurus. I'm thinking fixed. Because I was thinking about like air, and I'm like, I wonder if air is going to come up next, because we have earth, fire, water, but then we have more earth. And the middle decan of Taurus is ruled by the moon. So we have the moon kind of showing up. We have the Ace of Discs. That's the cardinal 0 degree point of Capricorn. Southern solstice point. We're not there yet, We still have next lunar month in the Chinese calendar before we get there, but still a relevant consideration. Maybe kind of emphasizing what I was talking about earlier astronomically, but we'll see what the message is. We have Capricorn showing up, the devil. That's going underneath the Princess of Discs. Two of Wands. That's the first decan of Aries, Mars ruled. It's called Dominion. That's going under the Knight of Wands. Interesting that we have this nice little elemental correspondence. Princess of Discs, Earth with Earth Capricorn. Knight of Wands, Fire with Fire Aries. We have the Prince of Wands next. So more fire. That's going under the Queen of Cups. We have the Ten of Cups, last decan of Pisces, Satiety. That's a Mars-ruled decan. We have the Four of Cups, which is the last third decan of Cancer. I almost said Capricorn. Also ruled by the moon. So we have two moon-ruled decans showing up. I feel the need to draw some more, so let's keep going. Two of Cups. It's the first decan of Cancer, ruled by Venus. Love. That's going to go under the devil, under Capricorn. Nice little oppositional energy there. Knight of Swords, some more air showing up. Actually, our first bit of air to show up. That's going under the Two of Wands. We have Four of Swords, Truce. It's the last decan of Libra. Five of Wands, Strife, first decan of Leo. Saturn ruled. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this last decan of Libra is ruled by Jupiter. Let's see. And then we have the Hanged Man, which personally I've always kind of associated with Pisces to some degree, but it's kind of a simplification, I think. Okay, let's see. As far as numbers go, we have 2 showing up twice. We have 4 showing up twice. And those are the only duplicates that I see. We have 4 cards associated with fire. We have 2, 3, 4 cards associated with earth. And then we have 3 cards associated with water, 1 card associated with air. It's very little air energy, very little flexibility. Seems more like a dynamic movement constructing period of time, maybe even deconstructing period of time. But it's very we have the Prince of Wands in the heart of the reading, so there's a lot of fiery sort of, I'm hesitating to say explosive, but it does kind of feel that way with the reading here. He's kind of boxed in with the Mars decans. He's in between the Two of Wands, that first decan of Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and then we have the Ten of Cups right next to him, which is the last decan of Pisces, also ruled by Mars. And these two decans kind of, I'm hearing the word blockade. It's not the right word, but I think it's interesting that's coming up. They sort of frame the vernal equinox point, that March 20th, 21st-ish point when the sun crosses into the cardinal 0 degree point of Aries. When it begins its ascent above the equatorial plane, it intersects with it, which naturally has like this more Martian, more kind of explosive fountainhead type of energy, like the start of the cycle, this beginning of the year. Nowruz, you have the Persian New Year that starts at this time. A lot of calendars sort of time themselves around the March equinox as being the sort of the foundation of the year, the beginning of the year, the start of the year. And it's also Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. We've retained the calendrical system, the sacred calendar within the astrological system that we have retained today. So I'm almost wondering if what's the story that's taking place this lunar month, whatever's kind of transpiring here is going to yield its manifestations around the time of the spring equinox in 2025. Like, I wonder if we're not going to be seeing the results of what starts now until around that period of time. I'm looking at this Princess of Discs. And this to me is representing a very methodical, kind of slow approach, really gathering information and facts before saying or doing something. It's the foundation underneath is Capricorn, so that is the literal foundation of the zodiac. It's the lowest sign. It's a sign that follows the sun's southern solstice. So there is this kind of element of like making sure that the foundation is laid and that everything is level, the correct materials have been made, the correct amount of depth has been accounted for, so that whatever construction is built on top of the foundation doesn't shift or even fall over because of a failure of this foundation. So it's like the Princess of Discs is somebody who considers these things, who considers these very minute but very fundamental measurements or concepts before enacting change or before stating their position on things. And it can represent, I'm hesitant to really convey any idea of gender to this. I mean, obviously Princess of Discs, we think more of like the feminine, more receptive energy, can represent like an actual person, but I think it represents more of like a faculty of thought, of kind of approaching a trade, so to speak, with a willingness to learn. Like, it's somebody who's taking on an apprenticeship to some degree. Maybe not literally, you don't have to take that literally, but it's like approaching a situation, a new situation, or a situation that's new to you or to this particular person, with a willingness to learn from the people who have already established their mastery or their what's the word? I can't think of the word. But like their competence, there we go. They have already demonstrated their competence and their understanding of this new system that the Princess of Discs is beginning to kind of explore and dabble with. It could represent taking on a more conservative approach, politically or literally, like just being very measured about things, making sure that resources are being properly allocated, checks and balances are in place. There's been a lot of like chess analogies on my mind lately because I've been watching and playing a lot of chess, like just this very strategic thinking. Like, she's the sort of person that will weigh out a move on the board before she even makes the move, and she'll measure out the counter moves and the potential obstacles that might arise if she does make this decision. So it's like this very very strategic, very detail-oriented consideration prior to implementation. And I'm looking down at the Two of Cups now, because that is kind of at the base of this column that we have going with the Princess of Discs, the Devil, and then we have the Two of Cups. We have Cancer. This is kind of like interpersonal relation, harmony. It's like maybe through this more strategic, more careful and measured approach, you're able to sort of create a space for more harmonized interpersonal relationships. By kind of following along the vein of the message that's been coming out a lot lately, at least with the readings that I've been doing, of this need to be reserved and to think before you speak, think before you do, weigh out the consequences, weigh out the responses to your approaches before you actually commit to enacting them. Um, because I think most of us want to create a space that's more conducive to uh, uh, amiable or amicable discussions rather than outright like conflict and fighting. Like there's a lot of divisive rhetoric being thrown around in this period in time, and I think it's important for us to kind of pull back from that a little bit and hold space to the opposite. Like hold space for open discussions where it's not like a yelling match or anything. Weigh out the different pros and cons to each different perspective and try to find a thread that binds all of them together. And I think that's what a lot of us are trying to figure out right now, because I think a lot of us are aware that if we continue down the path that's sort of being established for us, it probably isn't going to end very well, or at least it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people. So I like this approach and I like this message. Knight of Wands kind of feels antithetical to that to me. This is more like the rash, impulsive, quick thinking, like quick decision making, like doesn't sit around and mull things over before saying something or before doing something, committing to a project and, kind of pursuing that path, just kind of going for it. Like we have obviously the first decan of Aries showing up with this Two of Wands card here, this very impulsive, very I'm hearing like newborn energy type. Like maybe this is the childlike, naive approach that the hexagram was talking about, of like just riding and trusting the inner urges and impulses that arise. But I think with the Knight, because the Knight in this deck is sort of the equivalent of the King of Wands, I feel like this represents more of a mastered approach to the fire element. Like it's not necessarily impulsive. It's quick, it's sharp, it's maybe a little aggressive, maybe a little off-putting at times, but it's truthful, it's virtuous, it draws from the correct sources, is what I'm seeing as I'm looking at this Two of Wands. And beneath that, you have the Knight of Swords, which to me represents like this process of communicating. And I feel like what's being communicated is this Two of Wands concept. The heart of the matter of what the Knight of Wands is conveying or is standing up for, is digging his heels down into, is what I'm hearing. And this Knight of Swords is like the dissemination of the tactics or the approach, like I'm hearing like maybe the plan of the chess game. Like I'm seeing like this Princess of Discs and this Knight of Wands are maybe playing on opposite sides of this chessboard. But the Knight of Wands like already has like an intuitive delineation of the moves that he's going to choose to make in order to succeed in this game. And it's like this Knight of Swords, I feel like, is whispering to the people in the audience. Like this is really strange imagery that's coming through. It's like whispering to people in the audience and kind of, explaining what the Knight of Wands is going to do before the Knight of Wands does it. And it's not like it detracts from what the Knight of Wands is doing. I feel like it's actually providing more of a sense of respect for this person, because like maybe there's like a stretch of logic and intuition that needs to take place in order to even comprehend the level of quick thinking computation that the Knight of Wands is coming up with. And then this Princess of Discs, it just seems like more she's learning how to do this and is being very cautious about the moves that she's making. And so this Knight of Wands is definitely at like a point of advantage. Like there's more like they both have supportive elements. Like obviously you have air at the bottom of this fire column here. You know, air feeds and invigorates flame, and then you have water here underneath this kind of pillar of earth. And water nourishes the earth and allows plants to flourish and grow. It's conducive for fertility and things like that. So there's like supportive energy on both fronts. But I just feel like this Knight of Wands is more at a position of advantage just by virtue of knowing what they're doing and knowing why they're doing it. I feel like this Princess of Discs is still trying to figure that out. Queen of Cups right next to the Knight of Wands, obviously antithetical energy to the fire. We have water showing up. And this Queen of Cups can represent like an actual person, or it can represent this faculty of connecting with and interfacing with delineation is what I'm hearing. Interfacing with the language of symbols, interfacing with dreams, divination, you know, oracle, the I Ching, that sort of thing. It's like I'm feeling like if this Knight of Wands were to sort of dabble in this, it would just slow him down, and he'd end up, you know, the flame would end up being put out by the water, and it would just be like steam kind of billowing up and being useless and not driving in any particular direction. So maybe this is kind of going back to the message that was coming through with the hexagram, where it was kind of talking about like not being too dependent on these symbolic forms of interfacing with the message that the universe is trying to convey, not trying to reframe or reshape the message that you've already received. You know, and I feel like a lot of times the danger with divination is that people will hinge their decisions upon what's being divined. Like they won't make specific decisions unless the oracle sort of confirms supportive momentum behind it, which I mean is not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like it can be debilitating if it's overused. So maybe I feel like that's kind of what's being communicated by this Queen of Cups here, because she kind of just feels like she's in an awkward spot. She's, you know, surrounded by fire here on three fronts. She's got earth kind of boxing her in there, and then she's got a little bit of water to draw from, but she's got to get past the Prince of Wands and the Six of Discs in order to do so. So it's just kind of like she's in an awkward position. It doesn't feel like this is necessarily the time to sit and ruminate over visions. It's more time to be practical, methodical, impulsive maybe, but as long as impulse is driven by virtue. I hope that makes sense. Underneath the Queen of Cups, obviously we have more fire with this Prince of Wands here. There's definitely like a clash, of course, with the elements. Again, like I was saying, with fire and water. But I'm trying to think, like, what does this remind me of? I'm hearing emotional manipulation, which I think is interesting. Like this Queen of Cups is trying to put out the fire of this Prince of Wands. You know, she's maybe in a position of advantage because she's more not fulfilled. She's in a higher rank within the court. So she has more resources available to her and more supportive figures to enact her will. And so also with her position of being in a state of mastery of her element of water, you know, she's more able to direct the water element at this Prince of Wands, who is just trying to figure things out, who's just starting to connect with the truth of self, to connect with the passion of being alive, and learning how to direct that into his endeavors, for lack of a better word. But this Queen of Cups, I feel like can utilize emotional tactics in order to stop this Prince of Wands from going in a direction that she doesn't want him to be going in. I feel like because this Prince of Wands is kind of at the heart of the reading, I feel like this represents maybe where we're all sort of coming from in this particular story or this situation. where we're just starting to peel the layers of self back, and discern the truth for ourselves, and to, to find those sparkly rocks at the bottom of the pond or the lake in the middle of this cave, being surrounded by these dangers. I feel like the Queen of Cups is like the water. She's the pond. She's the uncomfortable spaces that you need to navigate in order to get to the shiny rocks, in order to get to the truth of the situation. um, and I'm saying that with the Six of Discs kind of showing up like this right next to her, and I'm thinking about like the stalagmites and the stalactites. It's like the energy of opposition, the energy of the obstacles, the sharp things that you have to kind of work around or navigate around in order to find success. And it's like, in order for this Prince of Wands to be successful, he needs to keep the flame lit even as he's submerged in the water of the Queen of Cups. Even as you're traversing these dark corners where the truth is kind of, I'm hearing, is black pilling, where the truth is kind of conducive for perpetuating a nihilistic viewpoint of things. So it's like, keep the flame alive is what I'm hearing. Like, don't subject yourself, or don't accept being in a state of feeling powerless. Like, don't give up just because things are getting tough, just because you're sort of going through a period of time where it feels like you're fighting the current, or it feels like everything's going to overwhelm the light within. There's a lot of obstacles in place, or there's a lot of oppressive elements. Like, water can be very heavy, very oppressive, very overpowering. But it's like, I think with some care and diligence and exercise is what I'm hearing, like deliberate attempts to cultivate the inner energy, whether that's through like physical exercise, through reading books or materials that sort of help to keep your mind sharp, maybe even playing chess to kind of keep the strategic logic part of your brain sharp, and able to be able to kind of quickly adapt to any situation that arises. Because I feel like there's a very almost like tsunami like energy that this Queen of Cups is representing. Like, it's very slow, but it's very large energy, and it can very easily overpower the little flame, the little candlelight that is this Prince of Wands, just beginning to glow in a very dark and depressive world. But it's interesting, framed in by Mars, like there's a lot of drive and a lot of purpose and a lot of truth, a lot of virtue maybe, that is going to support this Prince of Wands, this explosion into spring-like energy, this explosion into that fountainhead, vital energy sort of pouring out of the soul, and invigorating your daily activity, like feeling passionate about a project, or feeling passionate about creating positive change in your community, in your environment, in your family, in your friend group, whatever it is. Like, by keeping that flame alive, maybe through to that point where the vernal equinox takes place next spring, next March, I should say, rather. And just trusting that the momentum is going to take you where you're meant to go and where you want to go. Because this Prince of Wands is holding his hand out to this Ten of Cups right next to him. It's like, I feel like he can get there. He can hold on to this state of inner happiness, this state of feeling supported and secure and fulfilled, and invigorated by, I'm hearing, like nourishing foods and emotionally nourishing circumstances and friends, relationships, like holding on to those good things in order to help you navigate and traverse through this Queen of Cups situation, this tidal wave, this tsunami, this dark, murky water that wants to oppress you and depress you, I should say, rather. But like, keep moving forward, keep pushing, keep that fire element going. I feel like the fire element is like what's at the biggest advantage in this spread today so far. Beneath the Prince of Wands, we have the Four of Swords, which is, again, like I was saying, that last decan of Libra. So the four energy to me, obviously you have the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. Um, Cancer at the north, you have Aries in the east, Libra in the west, and then Capricorn in the south. There's a very fundamental, very foundational, very affirmational. I don't think that's quite the word I was getting into, but it's like sort of I guess the affirmation of the air in this particular case with the swords element, of the air element within the world, like providing a structure and a space for ideas to flourish. Where there's not conflict of interest, there's not conflict and discourse, there's no yelling matches or any sort of thing. It's like by sticking up for the truth and by committing yourself to learning about the truth and pursuing it in spite of opposition and obstacles, you enter into, or you create a space where this sort of energy is more readily interfaced with, where things do feel harmonious, things are being communicated and are being shared with productive rhetoric, I should say, as opposed to divisive, destructive rhetoric. I feel like that's where most of us want things to progress into. I think a lot of us are tired of constantly infighting and pointing fingers at each other, and tired of watching other people do it and feeling kind of powerless to stop them. But I feel like you are where it begins. You are at the heart of this reading. Like this Prince of Wands, you are the example for everyone else. And by being the light, by holding that torch in the dark cave, you're able to light other torches that continue to light the space and eventually overcome the jagged shadows, so to speak, and provide illumination and clear understanding of what's going on. And maybe this cave analogy is also representing like being lost in an unsupportive and restrictive environment, and by spreading this light around, by spreading understanding, by spreading compassion and commitment to truth, true speech, and clear articulation of what the actual problems are, as opposed to fixating on maybe less important things, you're able to create a light and an ability to see where you can go in this particular cave to maybe get out of it and to return to the surface again, and the surface being the more supportive, conducive space for human activity, because we can grow our own food, we can find wood and find trees and animals for whatever however you want to take that. Just another rabbit hole. But yeah, 6 of discs, like I was saying, this kind of being representative of those so-called stalagmites, stalactites, the creeps and the crawlies and the enemies kind of lurking behind the corner, and the things that are surmountable through careful and diligent attention, through channeled intention, because you have this harmonization of the 6 of the luminaries, rather, 6 of the celestials. You have Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, the Moon, Mercury, and Mars. And then I guess the unifying factor between all of them is the sun, which is truth, which is light. And it's like by channeling and harmonizing all these different approaches, these different perspectives, the fiery impulsive, the careful calculating earth, the emotional, hopefully not manipulative water, the communicative, rational, clear thought of air, and all the different nuances of the 6 planetary bodies being alluded to here. By getting them all on the same page and aligning them with purpose, we're able to find success. We're able to find our way out of this oppressive cave, this dark environment that doesn't support our endeavors. It doesn't support human progression. But it's like it was necessary to come into this cave because it allows us to see reality stripped naked and stripped bare, and reality of self, and it helps us to see who we actually are, because being in these adverse situations where we're being faced with challenges, it's like we don't have time to really think about what we're doing, maybe, And so that's kind of what this impulsive energy I was talking about with this Knight of Wands. Like, this is the survival instinct taking over. These are the natural inclinations. You know, you see the best and the worst of people at the worst of times. People will either rise to the occasion and be the best person that they can be in order to support themselves and support the people that depend on them, or they can be terrible, manipulative, conniving people and try to take advantage of the situation for their own selfish goals. You know, and that ends up being kind of destructive for everyone else. Yeah, I think I lost the thread with that one there. But maybe if you go back and listen to just a couple seconds before, you can kind of see the progression of that little storyline. Man. Okay, so bottom of this particular column, we have the Five of Wands, Strife. That's the first decan of Leo, Saturn ruled decan. You know, this is kind of representing those energies that sort of exist at the pinnacle of something. You know, like once you reach the top, you're met with maybe jealousy and opposition. You're met with how do I word this? Conflict, I guess. Well, because like when you're in a position of authority, there are people around that are going to be upset about it. They're going to be jealous of the power that you have to enact your will, and they're going to want to fight you for it because they want to be in that position. They want to sit on the throne. They want to be that Leo king archetype. So why are you there? You know, and it's like it's a pissing match. You know, and I'm thinking this is connecting to those creeps and crawlies, those enemies and lurking. You know, these are the people that don't want to see things progress. They don't want success. They don't want harmony. They don't want cooperation. They want the division because they profit off of it in some way. You know, I'm hearing like by creating the problem, they can make themselves a solution. And that can be political, it can be emotional, it can be like interpersonal, like even just like on a one-on-one relationship, however it's manifesting. Like I feel like that's what this card is kind of representing. It's like this creation of a problem in order to sort of insert themselves at an advantage in the situation. Going back to the chessboard analogy, I'm hearing it's like challenging a piece on the board, like placing your knight here so that it's checking the king, and it's like, what are you going to do about it? Like, I've just created a problem for you now. Now, how are you going to solve this problem? But it's like this energy is kind of like getting off on that. Like, I like putting you in a position of conflict, or like feeling like I'm aggravating or challenging your stability and your security. I like being there. That's kind of what this Five of Wands is communicating to me right now. Okay. I'm gonna need some water soon, y'all. I'm starting to slow down. Ace of Discs. This to me, I feel like, is the emergence from that cave. It's right next to that six of discs right there, which, you know, was kind of showing itself to me as like representing the obstacles that are being overcome. You know, these are the shadows that are sort of overwhelmed by the light that's shared. And it's like once that's done and you've delineated the path forward, you can see how to get out of this cave. You know how to navigate now. You have the Ace of Discs, and this is like breaking out. This is breaking free. This is following the established path of truth and beginning the construction of something better, something that's informed by this journey that was undertaken, this journey through the underworld, where we learned about ourselves and we learned about each other. We learned what we've been doing wrong and what we can be doing better. And this Ace of Discs is like, okay, so let's lay the first stone in the foundation. This is, again, that cardinal southern solstice point, cardinal 0 degree point of Capricorn. This is the lowest point of the zodiac, the lowest point of the ecliptic. The foundation, the that which upon everything rests upon. It's like the initiation of the construction. Beneath it, we have the Four of Cups, which in this deck is called Luxury. And again, that's the last decan of Cancer. It's ruled by the moon, kind of in opposition to this Ace of Discs. I think maybe this is sort of communicating the need to have like an emotional component or an emotional understanding, emotional security and stability within the construct, because fundamentally we build our houses, we build our buildings in order to create stability and security for ourselves, and it's within that stable space that we live our lives, and we ascribe our associations and our values to things, our values and our appreciation for circumstances, for memories that we're forming, for the people that we're exploring life with. And I feel like that's kind of what's being communicated here. It's like once we have that sort of safe space, again, that number 4 with the cardinal directions, the 4 corners, the 4 pillars, the 4 walls of the house, of the room, of whatever it is, like this is the safe space within which we can feel, and we can, within which we have the freedom to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Sentimental? I don't think that's quite right, but maybe. Where we're able to connect with the sacredness and the meaning and the beauty in being alive. But it's like we're only able to do that when we are living within a construction that's conducive to doing so. I feel like our systems of late have been rather oppressive and tyrannical, and we're moving into a new phase of the human condition where we're not allowing that paradigm to overstep our individual sovereignty anymore. I feel like a lot of us are moving away from reliance on centralized authorities and governance and idols and figures that purport themselves as knowers of everything, and rather we're like acknowledging that we're all in this journey together, and we all need to work in harmony in order to kind of implement our different approaches and gifts into this overall construction. And I feel like this is something that I repeat often in the readings that I've been giving lately. I kind of feel like I'm beating a dead horse with it, but I keep looking at it, but I think I'm going to move on. We have the Hanged Man here. This to me is like a suspension of our biases, a suspension of our own perspectives and understandings of things in order to understand things from a different perspective. Obviously, he's upside down, so he's kind of seeing things shifted. This is kind of a weird analogy, but there's been times in my life where like I've been watching like TV or something, and I get a little bit bored sitting there, so I sit upside down on the couch or on the floor, and I'm watching the TV upside down, and it just totally changes your perspective of what's happening. Everything becomes comical, even the way they're walking, because they look like they're bouncing, and you don't notice these things when you're looking at them from right side up. But it's like by shifting your perspective, by forcing yourself to look at things through a different lens, you realize maybe how ridiculous something is, or how ridiculous your previous conceptions of reality were, and come to a new understanding, a new, more integrated and holistic approach, because you have these two, I'm hearing despairing, opposing perspectives of what reality is, and by sort of steeping yourself in the opposite of what you typically navigate in your day-to-day life, it provides you an opportunity to really change your approach to things and to operate from a more informed place. And I think it's interesting that in this reading, the Hanged Man is like almost diametrically opposite where the Queen of Discs is in the spread. They're kind of set up like this, like she's the ingress point, she's the beginning, and this is where we end up in this understanding of things from different perspectives, of of honoring and trying to be empathetic and compassionate towards the people around us. You know, kind of seeing and understanding their method, their approach to the chess game, so to speak. You know, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with like the communication of this Knight of Wands moves, how it provides people in the audience with a sense of respect for the thought process that this Knight of Wands has behind all the moves and the choices that he's making. And it's like that's that process of understanding and coming to a state of respect for and compassion for this other party, this other person, is what's being represented by this Knight of Wands here. And I feel like this whole bottom third of the reading has been very much about like coming into this state of harmonization between opposites, harmonization within conflict. You know, the only sort of conflict prone card in that row is actually just the Five of Wands. Everything else feels more supportive to communicating, towards feeling, relating, harmonizing, synchronizing, loving and appreciating one another, and appreciating, you know, your different understanding of things, your different opinions of things. You know, Knight of Wands, interesting. The Hanged Man, to me, is also connected with like altered states of consciousness, so like exploring with psychedelics responsibly, I hope, and allowing that to be a source of information, a source of perspective, a source of understanding that invigorates your approach to things, invigorates your ability to empathize and be compassionate to people who are different from you or who think differently than you do. Because that approach is going to be more valuable than anything else moving forward. Okay, y'all, I have worn myself thin. I'm going to get some water, get some lunch, and move on with my day. But hopefully this reading had something to offer each of you, and maybe provided you with something that you can use in your own life, or maybe just helped you to understand the situation that you're navigating from a slightly different angle. But again, don't take my word for law, you know, kind of like what I was saying. Come to your own understanding of things. You know, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Maybe what doesn't will kind of become relevant as time progresses, and maybe it won't. But don't ascribe so much importance or weight to it. Like, just be flexible, be adaptable, be compassionate, be thoughtful, be mindful. And we'll leave it at that. Wish y'all the best. Love and hugs and blessings and all those good things.